Oh gosh, we are delayed. We'll work it out. You'll work it out.
Am I? Hang on. Am I somehow on Wi-Fi instead of real internet or what? Probably. That's usually what happens. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those days. Oh, we are live. We are live on the thing.
Live on the live
Live,
stream thing.
live on the live stream thing. I think. Go
What's
here.
that called again?
Restream.
Restream. Yeah, restream.
Restream.
That's right. All right. It's episode 62, I believe.
Yes.
You start us out.
Let's just tweet this. Tweetily tweet this linkity link.
Twiddly tweet it. Let me hit my Twitters. And then I can see Mr. Michael Dorindes.
62 of.
Oh man, I gotta get that picture.
Boom. Tweet. 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 Oh, yeah. Apparently Periscope does it
Oh, okay.
automatically.
It does.
All right.
Okay. Hit us up.
Where are we? 1 minute 40. Okay, here we go. Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda,
And I'm Jake Bennett.
and welcome to episode 62 of the North Meets South web podcast.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Thanks for tuning in. We are both live on the interwebs of Twitter and on YouTube and all the places and all the things. So if you're joining us through any of those channels, welcome. You're live. And if you're not, then you're probably sitting in a car in traffic, and I'm so sorry for your misfortune. Yeah. Speaking of driving and traffic, this last week, Monday through Thursday, I had the absolute joy and pleasure of being in Minnesota during some of the crappiest weather ever. It was really crappy weather
Into what,
for a
cold
conference.
or snowing or?
It was just, well, I guess, okay. So to be fair, no, not cold or snowing. That would have been worse. It was just rainy. It's just like crappy weather. It was the weirdest thing. So like we're driving up and I'm messaging my wife like, oh man, sorry, like it's going to be raining. And she's like, no, it's fine here. I was like, what? And so it rained the whole time we're in Minnesota, and it was gorgeous the whole time in Illinois. And then we crossed the border. We literally crossed from, it goes to like Minnesota, Wisconsin to Illinois. We crossed the border from Wisconsin to Illinois, and I'm not lying. Like it was like, like clouds opened up and it was like sunshine. Like I have no idea why or what was going on, but yeah, just like, sorry, my dog's tearing stuff up over here. Yeah. So anyway, that was my week. So that was pretty much my whole week, just busy doing conferencey stuff. So it's for the job, so nothing really developer related, just talking to clients and that sort of deal. So yeah. How about you? How's your week been?
It was a pretty good week. We had a couple of things crop up at work, so I had to drop what I was doing and change context, which is always fun. It's
Always.
another one of those weeks where you get in on Monday and you go, all right, this is what I'm going to do. But Monday is my meeting day, so I've got all of the like leadership people in the business. We get on a Google Hangout and we go through all the departments and all that kind of stuff first thing in the morning on Monday. And then that goes into my weekly team meeting, which then goes into my weekly department heads meeting, which goes into my weekly one-on-one with my manager, just to touch base. So I lose Monday pretty much.
All day. Yep.
And
So
then,
no Mondays.
Yeah, no Mondays. And then after all that's done, then I have lunch. And then after lunch, the day's pretty much done. You don't really start anything. You don't really finish anything. You get nothing done. I spent a bit of this week pairing with one of my developers doing some UI stuff. And it's interesting because you and I guess a lot of people in the Laravel community have been following along with Adam Wathan and Steve Shoger and the refactoring UI stuff. And so we're all a little bit more sensitive to some UI patterns, and our CRM basically even now is still largely built on top of Bootstrap. And so I sat down to do some refactoring with my developer, or to do some UI stuff with my developer, and there's just colored buttons everywhere.
Oh gosh,
said,
yeah.
Why is this button blue? And he goes, well, I said, how many blue buttons do you have on the page? Like, what's the primary action here? And he goes, well, there's 4 primary actions. I said, no, 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 no. There's not 4 primary actions.
Yeah.
And then the classic, like,
And just because
this,
the class name is called primary, your primary, secondary.
yeah, yeah. And then the following along from that, inevitably the delete button is red. I said, well, why is the delete button red? It's destructive. I said, yeah, but it's bright red. Why are you drawing attention to it? You want that to be muted. So, just having those things. And it's funny because 12 months ago, I would have, maybe not to that extent, but I still would have been aware of it. And now it's really about thinking about having a primary and a secondary and a tertiary button, and then being a little bit more considered, like not putting a button in based on what it does, but putting a button in based on where it fits in the context of the page. So, that kind of stuff. And then trying to figure out panels and tables and layouts and things like that, where because you don't have, like, you've got all the little building blocks, but you don't have a panel component. So you've got to build that and figure out how you want to style it, and then figure out, do you want this to be a white panel on a gray background, or do you want to have a gray heading? And then, of course, you've got shades of gray. So then you're figuring out, is the background of this page a BG Gray 100 with a panel that's a BG Gray 200, or do you invert it? Because, you don't really want a dark panel. You kind of want a light panel, but you want to differentiate the header from the content. And then the pattern that I've seen in a bit of the stuff that Adam and Steve have been putting out recently is that you've got a white panel heading, but then the panel itself is the light gray. So it's sort of like inverting that. So you spend a bit more time now, but you think about what you're doing a little bit more than before, where it was kind of like you just put a panel here and it's done.
Totally.
So,
yep, exactly. That's right. Yeah. And it really depends on the context in which you're dealing with, right? So if it's like, I hate to say it this way, like there are some things that it's just like, okay, yep, it's done. Like if it's an internal tool, sometimes it's okay to do that. If it's like an external tool, you need to be a little bit more considered. But, it's like, I struggle with that sometimes, because it's like you have to figure out like what's the return on investment for the time that I'm spending to work on the design of this. So like, for example, there's one app that we built that was probably built, I don't know, maybe 2-3 years ago. We call it Face Cards. And so basically what it is we have 2 buildings, and we have remote employees. And so there's a lot of times no real way for people to get to know everybody else in the office that they don't work with, right? So we've got all the avatars that we spent forever shooting and editing and all that stuff. And then basically it selects 20 people each day that you can be quizzed on. And it'll pull anybody that has birthdays or work anniversaries for that day. And then it has like a proficiency score for how well do people in the company know everyone, and then pulls the people who are least proficient in the company, pulls like 5 of them, and then just kind of randomly grabs an assortment of others. But when we first designed it, it was very much just like, it was like over a weekend sort of deal, right? And so we let it sit out there for 3 years, and now finally we've gone back and refactored it. And at the same time, we didn't just refactor the UI. We also like looked at like, okay, there's some areas where it's slow and whatever, but that was the time to do it, right? It's like when you're going back, you're like, okay, we're going to spend a week on this app. Let's go ahead and actually take the time to refactor. So it's worked completely fine for 3 years. But now that we've got 3 years in, we have 3 years of data to kind of look at it and say, this is how we're actually using it. Let's take out the pieces that we weren't using before, whatever, right? So it's like, I don't know. It's like I have this like balance of like MVP, ship early, ship often, get feedback, and then iterate, versus I really want to polish this thing and make sure it's perfect. So it's tough. I think you can do both. But it doesn't mean you have to ship final product. I think that kind of getting the shape right before you do go into the detail, right? So like, and I hate to say like wireframing, that's not really what it is. Like, remember when Ryan Singer was at Laracon like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whatever it was, and they just did kind of that flow chart with no buttons, anything. It was just like, here's the page, here's the primary actions, right? And then like those primary actions lead to this next page. What are the primary actions on those? And it would kind of like guide you through whatever the thing was that you needed to do, right?
Yeah.
And that was it. Like that was all there was. And then from there, it was very, very simple. I mean, like fat marker, here's what it's going to look like, kind of, right?
Yeah.
Just here's the location, sort of, right? And so that allows you to kind of satisfy some of that ship early, ship often, ship ugly, get feedback.
Yeah.
And then once you've gotten it nailed down with your stakeholders that yes, we've got the right idea here, then it's like, then okay, yeah, polish and all that stuff makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that, like a lot of the color stuff, whatever, isn't even considered until you get to that final stage. So yeah, you can do both, I suppose.
Yeah. And so, we did a lot of that. It was around shuffling some things around and just figuring out, because we had like a note section, but then we had some, like when we do a service qualification for a site to see what technology might be available there, we put in a table of, these technologies available. They connect to these towers for fixed wireless. This fixed line product's available. It connects to this point of interconnect and things like that, and just sort of like shuffling everything around. But we were building an appointments sort of like booking tool for our install techs that go out to sites and things like that. And most of these techs are either on their mobile phones or on their iPads. And through tweaking this interface, we realized that on their phones, they weren't actually getting a mobile view. They were getting, a resized desktop view because, and we spoke about this, I think, on the last episode.
Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
The meta tag, I forget what it's called, but that meta tag was missing.
Yeah. Meta viewport, right?
Yeah, the viewport. That's right. So they were just getting the resized desktop view. So we fixed that up, and then it was a matter of like shuffling things around. So we had this view component for the service qualification, which is basically 2 columns. It's got the fixed wireless on one side and the fixed line on the other side. But then depending on what rendered above it, there was like this little thing floating in the corner and this big bit of white space in that column because there was nothing in it. And then everything on the right was pushed down. But because the qualification was in a row of its own, the whole thing got pushed down. So we actually had a chance to play with View Portal and to say like, yeah, this component can render a Google map, but we want that Google map to actually render up there in that empty space. And that allowed us to pull the whole page up really easily. So that's a really handy way, the quick little win we had just to fill in the available space rather than having this kind of like weird, because it pushes everything down and you don't really get a complete picture there. So just like playing around with that. And then with Tailwind, you don't get rows and columns like you do in Bootstrap. Yeah. Sure. So you've got to put your flex container, and then you've got to have your negative margins, and then you're padding on the internal things. And it's like nesting, all of these things so that you've got, everything lined up. And then I've come across, I don't know, and I suspect it's some wacky thing because we're using Bootstrap and Tailwind and there's some conflicting styles. But when we use like a MX for a horizontal margin or a PX for a horizontal padding, it seems to move everything left only. Even though it's applying margin left and margin right, the right margin never lines up. And it like drove me crazy. We spent like 45 minutes on this thing trying to figure it out.
Did you ever figure it out?
No, we just hacked around.
Oh gosh, that's the worst.
We just put like a ML6 on one side, just so that it was in the right spot. So
I'm sure it has to do with floats. Like it's probably got to do with like a tail or a bootstrap floats like stuck in there somewhere.
There's something weird. Like it may be because we use a container, for example, from
right, Bootstrap but like Tailwind has its own container.
But in Tailwind, like it only gives it a fixed width and that's it. And then you apply the MX Auto or whatever to it. So I'm sure that the Bootstrap container has got some extra classes applied to it that are wreaking havoc on us. So, we got it in a good place. We spent like 20 minutes designing a profile type card for an installer that's got their name and their contact details and stuff on it, just because we wanted something to fill. We found this little bit of space, and it's like, well, we don't just want to put like the installer's name in the top, because then we've got to find somewhere to also display their contact details. So why separate it? Let's try and group it together. And then we use that Laravel library that we've talked about on the show before to do just the like initials of the name as like a little avatar, like a gravatar thing. And then I
almost like it does on Google, like for your Gmail or whatever, right?
Yeah. And then I messaged you on Telegram. I'm like, this stupid thing doesn't even line. Like the characters are not in the middle of the circle. And apparently it's a rendering bug that's come up in that. And we went, oh, it's close enough now, so we'll just leave it at that. But
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I landed with that too, because I'm using it as well in a another project. It's like you kind of have to have something there, especially when you have like a profile card, right? Like if you
mhm,
don't have like an avatar of the user, you just got to have something there, like some
yeah,
circular something that like kind of fills in that spot.
yeah,
Um, and so it's just almost like expected at this point, you know?
yeah. And then I spoke to the person responsible for all the install text. I'm like, oh, do you have photos of them all? Like, we'll put their photo in there. And he's like,
Right,
no,
right.
why would you do that? It's stupid. I'm like, what do you mean it's stupid? This person calls up, you want to
So
know
you
who
used to
you're
know
speaking
who's
to,
coming
kind
to
of
your
thing.
house to
Yeah,
install. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, so we just put the initials in there anyway. But just that took up a couple of my days. Just we spent 3 or 4 hours sitting down and pairing through it, just to build these interfaces up and really sort of start driving out what the next iteration of our internal tooling looks like in terms of look and feel. Our company's got like a style guide, but I don't know how much detail it goes into in terms of applications and things like that. It'd be more like colors and logos and that kind of
Sure.
stuff.
Right.
But there's a fairly consistent look and feel across what I've seen of some of the newer applications that have been built from other development teams in terms of layout, the main application layout and things like that. So just things like that we're working towards now and slowly
There's like,
starting to creep in.
yeah, I feel like we have like probably three different design styles almost at Wilbur currently. So it's like we have this old school sort of bootstrappy sort of feel, right? Where it's like, okay, it's just bootstrap, just straight up bootstrap, like a very, very small customized version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like, okay, like the panels all look the same, whatever. So there's probably like two or three apps that are like built with that. And then there was like, hey, this period of time where we bring on this other developer and he doesn't use that customized version. He just uses straight up bootstrap.
Yeah.
Like, so he just uses bootstrap and that's fine. But it just looks slightly different, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the newest iteration, which is, hey, it's all our new stuff and we're using Tailwind only. And that all looks really super good. And a couple of the ones that I went back and refactored that were using Bootstrap, but are now using more like utility style classes as well,
Yeah.
or might be using the later versions of Bootstrap. And so those ones look sort of similar to the ones that we're using with Tailwind. So maybe three or four sort of iterations and versions. So it's like, when you've been building apps for the company for like almost 10 years, you just have kind of different phases. And it's not like it makes sense to go through and update the UIs of all these things at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So you just kind of have these almost like, you can kind of like dig through the layers of all the things that we've done. And so, yeah, I find it sort of difficult to have like this consistent UI that you apply 1000% like across the board. It just doesn't seem like it ever really happens that way.
Yeah.
It just kind of seems like as you make changes and add features and stuff, you eventually kind of update those things a little bit at the time. But people are like style guides, or they have been for forever. But there's things just change so quickly.
Yeah.
It seems like I don't know. I'm not sure what I think about that. Like we have a general style guide, like you said, for the business itself. But we don't have like specifically like a UI style guide.
Yeah.
Maybe it makes sense for like a larger business who's going to be like handing this off to like myriad teams of developers and designers from like different countries, blah, 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 whatever. And there's got to be a way to enforce consistency. But no, it's still only going to be like me and two other developers. Like you can still kind of wrap your head around it and keep a handle on things, So I think I guess it's less necessary to have that style guide.
Yeah. I mean, it gives us a little bit of consistency and at least a reference point to say this is what things should look like, and how you fill in the pieces is up to you. So a little bit of consistency from a structural point of view, but then a bit more free reign to tidy things up. And some of our stuff is in desperate need of it because we've just been bolting on and bolting on and bolting on for 12 years now. There's places in the application where things have just been thrown in because there's space to put them, kind of thing. Not this actually belongs there. So we need to sit down and figure out what goes where and what makes sense to be displayed and what doesn't make sense to be displayed and what makes sense to be a link to somewhere else for you to handle it and things like that. So It's you know, these long lived projects are certainly interesting in terms of seeing different, not only, you know, you look at code that you wrote a year ago and it's very different to code you write now, but then you're looking at UIs that you wrote 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and then coming back to it, and like you see the things have aged, but they've worked for so long, so it's hard. And then of course, as soon as you start redesigning everything, even though you consult with people and you make sure that you build what's needed and you put all the things in the right place, people still start to get funny about it because things are not what they're used to them being. So it's
Yeah,
it's a tricky thing.
we had a bit of backlash with that recently. We're redesigning quite a bit of like our external stuff. So like we changed our homepage, and it was exactly that. They've got a couple people like, I don't know how to find this thing. Like, where is this thing? And it was much more obvious to anybody who was new coming to the page. But the old guard, like it was always in the top right corner. Where is it now? Well, literally open your eyes. It's like right there. Just look. It's the button right there. But they're like, it's not where it used to be. So I'm not going to look. Right. And same thing, we redesigned our intranet page, which is like our homepage for everybody in the building,
Yeah.
right? That has all of whatever. But we basically made it we changed it from a list of links to a more like a dashboard. So here are all the applications that you have access to. Here's the number of actions that you need to complete. We have like this package that we created called user task list. And so when you arrive at the intranet, it'll look at, hey, which apps do you have access to? And then each one of those little app icons makes a call out to the app. So it's like app.wilburgroup.com/GUID, like the user's GUID, GUID, GUID.
You're just asking for a beatdown.
Yep, I am. So sorry, app.wilburgroup.com/user task list or something /GUID, whatever you want to do with it, however you want to call that, right? And that will just return a number. And so you just get like a little notification number, right? So, and then with the links that they have on the page, like we actually are tracking which links they use, and then we show them like the top links that they've used. So it's much more useful and customized to like that individual when they are on the page. But it's like, well, it's not where it used to be. So I just don't like it. You know what I mean? So yeah, people are sensitive about that stuff. The other thing I was going to say is like you were talking about like bolting on, and like you add things in certain places just because you kind of have a spot there. This is one of the ideas that like really kind of brought me over to liking the concept of mobile first design, because you have these constraints where you only have one tube of content to fill up. And so you really need to focus on the positioning and the primary elements that you want people to focus on, because you only have so much space, right? So it really forces you to focus on what's important, what I want them to see right away. So you start with that, and then from there you can still focus on those things as you scale up to the desktop. But now you have a little more room to add some like decoration, some personality, right? But it's still like you can still keep the main thing. You've already made the decision of where do we need to draw their attention, what do we need them to be focusing on. But then you can add secondary and tertiary elements, right? But that was kind of, I feel like, the argument that won me over. It was like, okay, that totally makes sense. Like it forces you to focus on the important things. And then, of course, also the idea, I guess, of like progressive enhancement, where you can't guarantee that everybody who's coming to your site has all the abilities of a desktop user. So you got to start small and then scale up rather than going the other way around. I find that it's easier for me that way, right? Otherwise, if I go from desktop and then scale down to mobile, it becomes like I have to cram a bunch of stuff onto a mobile screen, and it's like, where do I put all these things? So,
or you find that things, going back to that map example from before, because we were using a view portal to position it in the left-hand column of the top row of the page, when you went to a mobile view, the map and the rest of that content got split with another column. So it was like the thing that was in the top of that left column, and then the map, and then the right column, and then it went to the rest of like the stuff that was. So on a desktop view, it all makes sense. But now it's kind of like, here's the map, here's a gap, and here's the rest of the stuff that belongs with that map. So you end up having to like scroll backwards and forwards. And that's the kind of stuff like we saw it. We go, well, how do we fix it now? Because you want it to portal into that spot on the desktop view, but not necessarily on the mobile view. So yeah, things to be mindful of. Typically speaking, our internal CRM is not like,
Right.
If you say
It's
it looks
desktop
janky
usually.
on the mobile, we say, well, we're not supporting mobile. Like there's
Right,
just
right.
too
Yeah.
much in there that we don't even care. Like just suck it up or find a laptop or something. You can do
Right,
most
right.
things, but there's some tables in there, for example, that you can't scroll and you can't see them, and we've got like this navigation bar that's like 3 columns on mobile that collapses into 3 rows, and it takes up like a chunk of the top of the page, and things scroll under it. It doesn't hide or anything like that, so you lose like a third of your visible real estate on mobile. And we go, well, just grab a desktop.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. The things you can get away with when you're inside like a corporate network, right? It's like, nope, we don't have to care about you because we say we don't. Yeah, so we're probably for the most part similar to that. Like we don't necessarily have to have some of these things accessible or available on mobile. Tailwind does. You may have noticed working with Tailwind a little bit that they do kind of follow that paradigm, right? Of like the styles that are applied are assumed to be like for the smallest viewport size, and then as you scale up, if you need to change it, then you tag on MD : whatever, right? You know what I mean? So yeah, there's no prefix for like the smallest size, and then it's just like as you get larger, you do these different pieces.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. I like that. I appreciate that it is that way. I think Foundation was the first thing that pushed me to that.
Yeah, that really went mobile first. And mobile first is really nice, broadly speaking anyway, depending on what you're building. But in a lot of cases, building for mobile and then scaling up is going to be a lot easier, because I would be making this up, but I would assume that most people are looking at things for the very first time on their phones.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, I think for sure, like obviously Facebook traffic or whatever, I think their traffic, I know for sure they've crossed that like 50% mark, where the amount of traffic coming to their site over on mobile phones is more than the amount coming on desktop. And so it just really depends on like your distribution channels. Like, are you distributing or speaking about your application or your website through mobile channels? Then you're likely going to have a lot of mobile visitors, right? So obviously this is old news. It's not a demographic that can be ignored anymore. So you really kind of need to go that direction.
Yeah.
So we are on just tangent after tangent after tangent here, which is just fine. That's exactly what this show is. That's no problem. Was there anything specific you wanted to talk about on the show this week?
Yeah, let's talk about this thing. This
thing that we're talking about.
Monitoring, this scheduled task monitoring thing. I had a pull request opened to the framework to facilitate some of the hopes and dreams that you had sort of founded this whole thing on. So that got merged in yesterday, I think, or the day before, so we can start to knuckle down.
So tell us about it. So like, tell us like what was the purpose of the pull request? Like what did it accomplish?
So when we were discussing on the previous episode, Tom Schlick mentioned that we could potentially hook into the command starting and command finished events in the framework. So basically anytime a command runs, you can get it tells you this command ran, which was good, except it was for any time any command ran. So if you ran the command from the artisan command line, if you ran, PHP artisan, my task, whatever, then it would trigger that event. And there was no way based on the event payload to differentiate between a scheduled task run and just the command running anywhere else. So it made it difficult, and that kind of broke the dream of like just install this package in your application and it'll work, because we couldn't differentiate, and you would never be able to tell. And then you would need people to go into the UI and say, yes, this is a scheduled task, that isn't. But then, I don't know about you, but sometimes I've got scheduled tasks that run, once a day or every few hours or whatever, but I want to run it because, we suspect there's something wrong with it, which we have done in the last week or two. And it, because the command ran, we didn't know anything of it. And because it captured an exception and just wrote out to standard error, we didn't know that it had failed. So running it manually, that would have also triggered that event to fire. So I went digging deep into the core and found the right spot, or what I thought was the right spot for where to fire this event. And Taylor said it's not quite right. So I had to go back and tweak it a little bit. But basically now we've got a scheduled task starting and a scheduled task finished, which will fire for whenever an artisan command runs through the, the task scheduler. So now that that's in there, we can hook in. Obviously, when we install the package, we can do the initial setup, which goes and finds all of your scheduled tasks pushes them up to our little SaaS. But also for any task that you add later, you won't have to go in and configure another webhook endpoint or do any other configuration there, because we've got these events firing now. So we'll just know that, a scheduled task has run, and we'll be able to just check, like, did this exist before? And if it didn't, we can create it. And if it does, then we'll just update the last runtime and all that kind of stuff. So we get the payload, all the information that we need about the task that ran, and we can hook into that event with our own listener that does whatever else we need to do in terms of tracking environments, fingerprinting the payload, making sure that, we know what that is when it hits us. So that was a sort of significant piece for us in terms of making this really hands off. And there's like 3 steps to getting it up and running. Step 1, install the package. Step 2, run the install command. And step 3, there is no step 3. It'll all just work from that point. So yeah, I think that's basically as simple as it's going to be. So now it's just a matter of really building out the skeleton, getting it up and running. That we just need to build like the composer package now and throw this up somewhere, and we can start playing around with it, even if it's just you and I, just to get a bit of an understanding of the feel of, like, there is now some monitoring there, being able to track, when things aren't running, being able to track when things ran but didn't run properly, like they exited early, or they exited with an error or whatever. Because sometimes you won't actually get an exception. So as I said, in my instance, we were like capturing the exception and just like logging an error to the page. So there was no exception triggered in Sentry. So it wasn't until we ran it manually, because someone goes, hey, I haven't received this report for a little while, that we found out that there was an issue there. So it'd be good to start getting that in there and starting to flag some of these things and figuring out what we want to put into an MVP, which most likely is being able to set it up and then like start monitoring things. Probably just like email initially in terms of the notifications. And then I sent you like a whole bunch of messages last night, obviously in the middle of your night.
Yeah.
That's like,
I got them.
Questions around pricing. I was listening to, I said the Art of Product podcast. I'm pretty sure it was the most recent Art of Product podcast at the time of us recording this episode, where they were talking about low friction entry for developer tools. And like, you just want to install this thing and go in there and start playing around and using the sort of labeling that this is your staging environment. And then, not asking for a credit card up front, limiting what you can do, whether that's in terms of the number of projects or the number of tasks that we monitor, or the interval. Like, we might not send a notification immediately. We might wait 15 minutes to send a notification to say that something was missed, or something like, I don't know what that looks like, but then to say like, all right, now I'm ready for production, and say like, this is the bit where we ask for your credit card details. You go onto like a paid plan of whatever it is per month, and then you unlock more features or more tasks or more projects or whatever. I think you and I were fairly aligned in that it'll be like as many users as you want kind of thing. I don't think users is a metric that we sort of lock this down on. If you want to invite people into your your team, I guess, for lack of a better terminology, then you can do that. Like, you can create new user accounts under your thing to like log in and monitor. I don't think there's any issues with that. But then doing bits and pieces around, the types of notifications that we send later on and things like that will feel out over time. But I think, just initially, logging, sign up, create an account, install the package, and then you're basically ready to go. There's nothing else that needs to be done from there. So it'll be good. Hopefully that's been merged into 6.x now in the framework. So hopefully that'll come out when they tag a new release next week. Fingers crossed. But at least now that it's in there, we can start, forging ahead, knowing that code will be there and that we can use it to build this out. So that'll be really cool.
So I think I'm down with all of that stuff. I think that kind of like the thing that we're talking about here, and I've had a lot of these. So the thing is, like, this is a really felt pain point for me. Like, I deal with these things all the time, like every day. Every day I'm dealing with this stuff. And so, like, we already have an application that handles this for us that we built internally, but we need it for some external stuff as well. And I don't want to have to build an external version. So that's exactly what this is.
Yeah.
This is my external version of this. And so, like, this is not like this is not one of those things where, like, your users should be delighted. Like, that's not what we're going
users
for.
Should never hear from this ever.
Ever. Well, hopefully they should never hear from it ever. If they do, it's going to be like, if it's going to be great or whatever. But I want it to be like, this is not one of those things that anybody enjoys doing or setting up. So it's like a requirement, and you hope to never have to hear from it. But if something does go wrong, you definitely want something checking your back for you.
Yeah.
So we want it to be get in, get out, done. Like, that's it. Like, if you have a problem, be able to get in, diagnose the problem, and get out as quickly as possible. Nobody wants to spend any time here. So we're not trying to make it like the most enjoyable, fun thing you've ever done. It's just like, just get the job done and move along, right? So for me, like, I equate it to like an ATM. Like, give me the fastest way to get my card in, my money out, and leave. Like, that's it. Like, don't show me any advertisements. Don't do anything cute. Just
ask me if I want a receipt.
Just give me what I need and let me leave. Yeah. Right. So that's what I want for this thing. I want it to be extremely fast, extremely efficient, and just do what it's supposed to do and then get out. Right. So that's the one thing. What was the other piece? Oh, so yeah, I think kind of like for us, next step too is, as we're building this out, we want people to be able to, that are listening to this, to be able to either hear progress or be notified when we kind of put beta invites out. So we're going to have an email sign up list that I'm going to be creating a landing page for probably by the time this episode comes out. Do we want to say what we're calling it?
Yeah, I think probably by the time this episode comes out, the people that are listening live now can get a little head start on people.
Yeah. So what we decided, we originally, what was the original name you were going to call it? I can't remember.
I was going to be clever and follow the like elemental theme that's going around Laravel at the moment and call it Mistral. So like Mistral. So Mistral. I thought it was really cool and clever, and it like tied into the ecosystem a little bit, and you were like, no, that's not. No, it did. Yeah, I couldn't remember it and anything like that. So yeah, it tied into the ecosystem as far as like the concept of the name, like Mistral, because it's like, elemental or whatever. The thing that anybody who's doing this currently is likely using is this command that Taylor created for Envoyer, which is @ then ping on a scheduled task. Yeah. Right. So you say then ping, and then that pings out to an endpoint through and that goes to an endpoint on Envoyer, and then that will alert you. Here are the couple reasons why I don't use Envoyer. Number one, it's sort of difficult. Like, I have to go through and I have to go set it up in Envoyer. Then I have to go take that and copy the URL and paste that back into my app. And then it doesn't, it's, it only warns me once if it's failed. So like, if I miss that notification, you're screwed. Yeah. You know what I mean? You get one chance and then that's it. It's only going to notify you once. Which you would think would be fine, but like in the case that it's still failing after a day, like I might want another app, you know what I mean? I might want another reminder or something that it failed. So that's the other reason why I was like, it didn't really work out for me. But then ping is the command that you kind of use on the end of your scheduled tasks. So kind of going along with that, we're going to call the application then ping me. So it's then ping.me is the name of the SaaS. And so you can go sign up for the email list by going to then ping.me. Yeah. So easy. That's it. That's that. Yep. That's that. And we want the pricing to be really simple too. Like you said, kind of like, we're not really interested in like per user pricing or anything like that. We just want to be like, probably what is it that's going to cost us money to be able to maintain it? That's projects and check-ins, right? So like, that's where we're going to base our pricing around. Yeah. That's pretty much it. So yeah. Awesome. So I think we're both excited about it. I've got a logo in the works and working on some of the theming and that sort of stuff, the UI around what it's going to look like.
and have some great ideas around that. And then you're working on most of the code stuffs as it is right now, working in Inertia. So that's been kind of cool. And yeah, that's kind of what's going on with it right now. I think we're hoping to, I don't know if this is even possible, but we're hoping to have something out by the time Laracon AU comes around.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the goal we're shooting
about
for.
6 weeks out. I think it's reasonable, especially now that we've got this main roadblock out the way, to start really knuckling down and getting it all together. All of the functionality on the SaaS side in terms of sign up, log in, creating projects, deleting, managing projects is done. The ability to set up, so getting the Composer package to push its stuff into the SaaS, that's all good to go. So really now it's just building out the package, installing it into an app, and then testing it out, and starting to tweak in terms of.
I have the app to test it on.
Yeah, monitoring in terms of sending the notification and things like that. So yeah, we'll get it ticking along. We've had I don't know about you specifically, but I've had a few people reach out saying that they're pretty keen on seeing what we come up with and giving it a spin. So scheduled tasks are obviously fairly common in our space in Laravel. So it'd be good to see a bit of uptake and getting some early feedback from people. We might let people in. It's the hip thing to do at the moment, but letting people in, a few at a time, just to start testing it out, stress testing the application, tweaking UI and fixing up little things.
It kind of like controls the number of bugs that you get at a time, right? You can only fix so many things at once.
But it helps you. It lets you be vigilant in terms of what you can and can't work on, and if people say I want it to do this, and then we have to have a discussion about, does the application need to do this or whatever. So hopefully it'll be in a good spot. As we said when we first started talking about this out in the open, if it's just you and me that use this, then it's just you and me that use this, and we'll be happy because we need it.
Totally. It's funny because it is like a crowded space, isn't it? Like I don't even know how many people I've had like message me, reach out to me, hey, did you check this one out? It's like, yeah, I've seen almost all of them. I looked at all of them, and it's great. Like there's some really good ones out there and stuff, but like it's either the pricing that I'm like, that's really kind of icky, or I don't really like the concept, or it's not as simple as this one's going to be. But I loved what Justin Jackson's article recently about like selling ice cream on a busy beach, right? He's like, yeah, if you want to like, oh man, I'm trying to remember. We should link it up in the show notes. Basically, like you have a great chance of being able to sell some ice cream if you go like to where all the other ice cream vendors are, because like it's very obviously like a popular spot to be, right? So this is like a problem. Like people have this problem, so we don't need to convince the world that like this is something you need. Like people are aware that this is something that's needed. So if we can just let people that we know about it, and anybody finds it valuable, excellent, right? But like we don't have to convince people that they have a problem that needs solving. Like it's a very obvious thing. So we just are coming. We're another one of the people who's providing a solution. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, it's been about 44 minutes. I am all set for right now. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, I think that's all for now. I've got Laracon AU. I may as well talk about that. I got the designs for the t-shirt, stickers, badges.
Oh my gosh, they look so good.
We reached out to the same designer that did our stuff last year, so Nohemi Olvera. She did a really good job. I'm really happy with how this one's turned out.
Is she the girl that works for Titan?
She does work for Titan, yeah. So I had to ask Matt to make sure that it was okay, and he was very gracious to allow me to borrow his resources, his people, his excellent people. Can't speak highly enough. So very excited to have that. Hopefully we'll have that. I guess we'll use that publicly soon. So that's ready to go. We're going to start ramping up now in terms of getting all of the marketing pieces. So the t-shirts need to get ordered and made up, and all the artwork needs to be done for badges and posters and whatever else for the venue. We're going to do one more round of, we've got three talks left to announce, which will happen this week. And once that announcement goes out, probably after this recording hits, we will be putting the prices up. So this is your last chance. You'll probably have, I guess, 3 or 4 days from when this recording comes out to buy your Blind Bird tickets. Once we've announced all of our speakers, that's it. Prices are going up. You missed out. You've had, it's been 4 months now or so. So if you haven't committed yet, you're gonna miss your chance to pick up tickets at $2.99. They're gonna go up. So they'll probably run at the early bird price for another couple of weeks, leading into October, and then they'll go full price for the remainder of the time. So we'll keep going. We've sold 3/4 of our tickets, so it's
nice.
not like
That's great.
There's heaps of tickets left, and there's also not heaps of time left for you to get them at the Blind Bird price. So if you are interested in, or if you're teetering on the edge of deciding whether or not you want to come to Laracon AU at the end of October in Sydney, then this is your last chance to pick up a what I think is a quite reasonable. There's a couple of other conferences going on at the time, which I guess are vying for our eyeballs that we want to come to Laracon, but our conference is like 25% of the cost of the other one that's running at the same time. So
go to Laracon AU.
Go to Laracon AU. We've got some excellent speakers we announced last week. Freek is coming, so we've got Freak Cell will be at Laracon. We've got JMax coming out. We've got I think 5 or 6 first-time speakers, so I'm really excited to see what they bring to the table. They've got some great topics to cover off, so I've heard them highly recommend. So this is not coming out to a conference and giving a talk for the very first time. They've spoken at local meetups and things like that. This is their first conference talk, so I'm excited to be able to give people the opportunity to get up on stage and share their ideas in front of a captive audience. And then, wherever it goes from there, hope they remember us when they hit the big time as it goes. So yeah, very excited for those people that are going to be making presentations at a conference for the first time. Yeah,
should be awesome. I wish I could be there
next year.
Yeah, next year, the infamous next year. Well, before we go, I also want to give a shout out to Makeable. So makeable.dk, so it's makeable.dk. So Rasmus Nielsen and Lars Dahl, who is actually the chief developer and one of the partners in the business, got to meet them at Laracon, New York a couple months ago now. So it was really awesome, but they are sponsoring the show. And so check them out if you get a chance, makeable.dk. It looks like they've got some really cool stuff that they've been working on, some apps actually, which I'm not positive actually if they're web apps or if they're websites. Like
they do web and mobile
I'm not sure
apps for clients. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was looking for, if it's a web app or if it's a mobile app. But they've got some really interesting stuff out there. So it looks like they do great work. So check them out if you need anything done. Where are they based out of again? I'm trying to remember exactly.
They're based out of Aarhus in Denmark.
So if you're around Denmark, and they do speak English as well. So like even if you're not from Denmark, that's fine too. Looks like they do some really great work. So check them out. And thanks so much, Rasmus, for sponsoring the show.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, this has been episode 62. If you like the show, feel free to find show notes for it on northmeetsouth.audio/62. If you like the show, rate it up, share it with your friends. That'd be great. And if you have any questions or comments, hit us up on Twitter at Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at North South Audio. Until next time, check us out at thenping.me. Sign up for the email list, and we'll be sure to get you more information as soon as we know. We also have a Twitter account at twitter.com/thenpingme. Cool. Yeah. Awesome. It's been good, my friend. It's been good.
Yeah. It's always good to chat. Hopefully, as we start building out in the next 2 weeks, a little bit more of this app, we'll have some more for people to check out.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks so much. We'll see you in 2 weeks.